All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Good in the Head podcast. Today, we are blessed to have with us as a guest John Weiman, who is a life coach and one of the top marriage counselors in the nation. And I'm really excited to extract from him some of the key principles, characteristics, attributes, practices that it takes to live a life of greatness and improve relationships. Welcome, John.
Hi, Pete. How are you?
Doing well, man.
Yeah.
Super excited about this podcast, and let's say we dive right in.
Sure.
Can you start by telling the guests a bit about yourself, your background, your history, and your story?
Okay. Years ago, I was in this field. I worked in a long-term psych hospital. They don't exist anymore. I was a recreation therapist, and it was an incredible job. One day, this real famous guy I learned was coming to teach at the hospital, and my mom, who was a therapist and also the third Nike poster ever, that hangs in Nike's lobby. She was there. I asked my mom, I was like, Mom, this real famous guy is coming to teach at the hospital. And she said, who? And I said, Dr. James Masterson. And she said, oh, you know him. And at the time, I was going to school full-time, working full-time, engaged. So I said, Mom, I'm not hitting the books like I should. I don't know the name. I don't know who he is. And she said, who was your best friend in elementary school? And I was upset. I said, Mom, please, come on. I don't have the time. Tell me who this guy is. She said, just answer my question. And I said, it was Jimmy. We played together every day. And she said, that's his father.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, as a kid, you don't put the two together. And the next day I came into his first lecture a few minutes late, and the medical director and the director of nursing and everyone looked at me like, are you nuts showing up late for him? And from the front of the room, I heard, John Weiman, how are you? Dr. Masterson said hello to me, and I'm good, Dr. Masterson. How you doing? How's Jimmy doing? And he asked me if we'd like to get a cup of coffee after and catch up. And I was like, sure. And he asked me if I'd like to intern for him. And I did. And I worked with him for 9 years.
Wow, what a gift.
Yeah, I learned so much. And during that time, I got married. And I will say that I lied every single day of my marriage. I always said my parents were divorced. I was determined to be a better partner than my father. And so I just was a good husband, or thought I was. So I literally, when I say I lied every single day, what I did is I always said what she wanted to hear instead of what my true feelings were. And one day we talked, and she said I wanted to have kids. And my plans were going to graduate school and becoming, a PhD in psychology. It was my dream. And I didn't say that. I said, okay, let's have kids. And we couldn't afford to live in New York. That brought us to Maryland, and I left my dream. So 14 years of doing that. We had 2 kids, wonderful children, and it didn't work. And we led down a path of divorce, got divorced. During that time, my mother got lymphoma, and she had an incredible battle with cancer, incredible. And her battle is one of the reasons I'm alive today. Also during that time, best friend I ever had got killed in a car crash. I went on a road where I ate too much, slept too much, and drank too much. That culminated about 15 years ago when I walked into a hospital for stomach pain. And they told me, John, after 4 hours of testing and testing and retesting, after 4 hours, they came in and they said, okay, John, here's the deal. You're in complete liver failure. You keep doing what you're doing and you'll be dead in 2 months.
Wow.
And I said, okay, I'll stop. And I walked out of the hospital believing that cirrhosis was a death sentence. I mean, not many people survive cirrhosis. In my experience, I met 14 people who were on the transplant list. They all are dead. I'm the only one alive. So as I'm walking to my car, I think, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, my mom was really incredible in her battle. And if I can be half as strong as her, I'll be okay. And that felt good. It felt like that is attainable and I can do that. So I did that. 2 years later, I finally, Hopkins here in Baltimore, they wouldn't consider me for a transplant.
They wouldn't?
They would not. And the reason is that they were on probation for failed transplants. You have to understand very early on, you don't get a transplant because you're sick. You get one because they have to believe that you're going to make it to the table. And I went to Penn in Philadelphia, and Dr. Shaked, sitting in a room of 12 people, 12 doctors who were going to determine my life. And my brother-in-law came with me for support, and he asked me, are you ready? Are you prepared? You know, you have all your notes? And I said, no, I'm just going to talk. And Dr. Shaked asked me one question. Why should we give you a liver when you messed yours up? And I spoke with a passion I didn't know I had. I fought for my life, and I remember saying to him, Dr. Shaked, I guarantee you I'm going to make it to that table. And after that, it's your turn to do the rest, but I'm going to make it there. There's no doubt in my mind. And he said to me, you know, John, as you've been speaking, I was looking around the room at all 12 of us, including one who's an alcohol counselor. And we all nodded. Usually it takes 6 months for us to make a decision on each patient, but we want you. And I was like, thank you. I won't let you down. And during the 14 years, I had 2 strokes, one where I was on life support for 5 days, seizures where I flatlined twice, once 13 years after I stopped drinking. I had 4,000 pounds of fluid drained from my body.
4,000
pounds, that's correct. I had 50 pounds taken out every 2 weeks for a long time. It's called ascites. What basically happens, I'm not the physician, but as the liver becomes cirrhotic and scarred, I think of it as a toll booth. As the blood goes through the liver, originally there's 30 booths, so all the cars can go through. Well, with the scar tissue, it goes down to about 10. And the cars get backed up, and to get through, it squeezes fluid out of the blood cells, and it goes all over your body. You basically look pregnant. And they drain it, which has its own set of risks every time.
All of this happened after the transplant?
No, before.
Before, okay. And
Before.
how long between the time that he looked at you and those 12 people, and they all agreed they wanted you as a transplant candidate, and the time that you got your liver?
I was 12 years.
Wow.
was 12 years.
With a
I
2-month prognosis, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I was half as strong as my mom. I endured 12 surgeries. In fact, I was actually taken off the transplant list because I was healthy. There's something called the MELD score, which determines where you are. If it goes between 6 and 40, I started at a 22. To get a transplant, you got to be somewhere around 30. And for example, if I was, I got removed from the list I was a 7. And I'm like, John, you're fine. They put us on a different list. But if I was a 7 and you were a 20 and I've been waiting for 10 years, you go first. The closer you are to dying.
So the lower the number, the healthier you are, and the better off you are. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And
what was it that made you get down to a 7? What practices did you implement after stopping drinking?
I ate healthy. I did as much exercise as I could. I got back into the field I love.
So creative expression helped probably too.
Yes, absolutely. I view cirrhosis as one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Wow.
It was a incredible experience. I remember early on, I was always told, a healthy attitude, a positive attitude will make you healthy. And very honestly, initially, I thought it was nonsense. I thought it was complete nonsense. And then I started to feel better. And I questioned myself. Well, am I healthier because I have a positive attitude? Or do I have a positive attitude because I'm healthier? And I don't care the answer. I really don't.
The results were what mattered.
Yes. And, in my practice, the positive perspective is important. I remember one time, it was in like December of 2020. 2019. And I was a 7 and I got my blood work back. And it was the worst it's ever been. And I thought, oh, this is terrible. This is the worst time. I can't believe this. I'm going down now. I'm looking forward to the spring. This is destroying my life. I'm sick of this. And I'm walking out of my bedroom and going downstairs. And I look out a window. And I said, come on, John, positive, positive. And I thought, no, there's nothing positive about this. And as I took a step down, I thought, wait a second. I have 20 doctors I can call in my practice, and they'll take my call right now. They'll tell me maybe there's something wrong with the blood work. Maybe it was the lab's fault. Maybe something was wrong because the numbers were uncharacteristically high. And I felt great. So I thought, all right, I can call the doctors. And, if I'm going down now, this is good. This is good. I'll be on my boat, which is my dream, in June. There is no way. This is good. Finally, this is going to be over. I'm looking forward to this. That positive perspective was a walk down the stairs. It was that quick that I looked forward to transplant.
It wasn't always like that, though, in your life, was it? How do you cultivate that?
Not that quick. No,
yeah,
it wasn't.
Sure. That's amazing.
I remember one time getting frustrated about after year 4. And I said to a close friend of mine, how long do I got to be strong? I mean, I was just sick of it. And again, along the way, I saw 14 people that I became close with. One of the things about serious illness is, while friends and family can be incredibly supportive, the fact is you feel alone. And the reason you do is because no one can understand what you're going through unless it's someone that's going through the same thing. My wife and I, we would go to Penn, sit in the waiting room, and I would talk to a complete stranger. And my wife would say, I felt like an outsider in that conversation. You two immediately connected. I'm like, yeah, because we're going through it. And it's just something that you come to expect, that it's very hard for someone to understand what it's like. I mean, I'm sure when you hear, 50 pounds of fluid drained from your body, that's probably unbelievable to you.
That's a lot of weight.
Yeah. And one of the things I did to cultivate, you usually are wheelchaired to your car. I never did that. I parked far away and I walked every single time. I took the challenge on, and yeah, it wasn't always good. My seizure happened, turmoil. And when I woke up, one of the seizures, when I woke up, the doctor, who was a client of mine, my wife had, I was in the hospital that will remain nameless, but it wasn't very good. My wife had called my client, who's an ER doctor, and said, get him here and get him here now. I will arrange everything. And when we talked about it, she said, well, yeah, that would do it. That would definitely cause, the body to react the way it did.
Mm-hmm.
My stroke, that was pretty scary. I woke up and my dog Rusty was following me around all day. And mysteriously, through all my illness, I can look back now and see he was the predeterminant. Something was wrong, because he would, and different, in a different way. And one day, when I had my stroke, I lay in a pool of blood for 5 hours. And my wife found me. She came home and found me. Very honestly, some of the guilt I have to this day, and that was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I know when she walks in that bedroom, she still sees that pool of blood. I know she does. And Rusty, my dog, was lying in it with me, comforting me. Obviously, I wasn't awake, but I was flown to shock trauma. Then again on life support for 5 days. When I finally came to, they took the trach tube out, and they didn't know whether I was coherent or not. And the first thing that happened that I'll never forget is there I was 5 days, and they never knew whether I was going to wake up. And there is Sherry holding my hand after 5 days. And as the doctor comes in, he's asking me, is he okay? Is he all right? And out of the corner of my eye, I see my mother-in-law. And I turned and I look and I went, ew. And they're like, he's fine. He's fine. And, she,
Thank God, man.
That was a great time. Yeah, that was great. It was, when you have the trach tube in, they tie you down. Mm-hmm. And I was in an ICU room with someone else, and it's a police officer, and tried to kill himself with plastic knife. And there you are tied down. You can't do anything other than hit the red button, which I did. Rehab, I was in rehab for a couple of weeks. That was fine. And what amazed me is I was shocked at how many couples I work with came to visit me. I think I had over 20 couples. And it was really the stroke was definitely a life changer. During the whole time, stroke and cirrhosis, people would ask me, you know, like, well, at this time of year, I'll say, they ask me, John, what are you doing for Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day? And I'd be like, Pete, give me a break. I'm just trying to make it through tomorrow. That's all. I can't see St. Patrick's Day. There's no way I can see that. I don't see it. And it's not that I thought I was going to die. I just didn't know. And I came to embrace that because every day I lived, and I truly lived. And still do to this day. My attitude has changed a little bit.
What's your definition of truly living in the moment?
Well, one of the things is in my work in the home, I say, if I have a thought that comes into my mind, I say it, whatever it is. And two, I call them snapshot memories. And when there's something happening, I will I'll talk about it immediately. This is a snapshot moment, a connection moment with a friend, family, anyone. I smile thinking about it because last night I had one. We went out to dinner, and just looking at this restaurant and how Baltimore it was, it made me really think again. I'm really happy. I'm happy to do dinners on a Saturday night. I'm very lucky, very lucky.
So I'm guessing that these snapshot moments was a practice you implemented after living a life of not doing it and experiencing results of not speaking your truth in the moment.
Yeah. How dark do you want me to go, Pete?
I'm not afraid to sit in darkness. Been
Good.
there.
Well, in this time, when I left the field, I had a business. The business went under. And it went under because, unfortunately, I had one customer who was very big. And also in the divorce process, we kept it quiet for 5 years. No one knew. And we did that for the benefit of our children. One of the haunting memories is I would sit home alone on Christmas, living a mile away. After the 5 years, I said to my ex, I said, look, we can't do this anymore. We have to tell the truth. She had asked me early on to keep it quiet for the benefit of the boys, and I obliged. Well, I would sit at home alone while my father drove 4 hours to go visit her and my children. And I sat home alone, and I was a mile away. And I just couldn't believe it. When I ran out of money, I can't speak for her, but essentially there was a message and an occurrence where my children haven't spoke to me.
How many years? I broke up a little. 16?
17.
17. Yeah.
And I literally yesterday, I wrote them a letter. And looking at that, I do know that they would be proud of me today. I was never given the chance to explain my side of the breakup of the marriage. Never given that chance. So I know and believe in my heart, and everything I did to live was so they would be proud of their father.
That's beautiful. And I love that. And I can take that and use it. So thank you for sharing that.
Anytime. I consider myself a role model for facing adversity. Went through a lot, and today
I'm interested in something,
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt, but in all of this adversity, I mean, from what you've told me years ago, in order to sort of repress the suffering from the painful moments you've experienced, you used to drink. What are some practices that you implemented over the years now to deal with the potential massive suffering that you could be going through, but by, pardon upon, being good in the head, you just are able to live a fruitful life rather than stuck in that dark place?
I love it. I've always said everyone has a story, everyone has a dream. And if you mess with either one of them, you end up talking to me.
Oh, look at that. Here we are.
Yes.
Just kidding.
Seems to resonate with everyone like couples.
Oh, yeah.
But we live on the water. We live on the Chesapeake Bay. And one of the things I'll do is just take a boat ride. And I have my headphones on, and I listen to great music and sing horribly at the top of my lungs.
So you let it out.
Yeah, I believe that the darkness is a cancer, and you have to get that cancer out somehow by talking about it. Just right now with you, telling you about the darkness of what I've gone through. And by the way, they found cancer. And you know what? Bring it on. Because there's no way that's going to stop me. They found it and they said, we think we got it all.
Heard that before.
Yes. And so you're going to get CT scans and MRIs for 5 years. So far, so good. But again, there's no way it's going to stop me. And I remember, in the tribute to Penn, the people at Penn, when I was outside the surgery, Dr. Shaked came up to me, and I met him 3-4 times in 14 years. I mean, it was not long, and so impressive. I said, so Dr. Shaked, you remember what I said? And he said, it's my turn now. And that gave me 100% confidence. But as the dark side also, when we were in the operating room before, I think it was like a rock concert, right? All the opening acts are there, and it's really relaxed. And all the assistants are like, hey, John, what do you want to do? You want to listen to music? What do you want to hear? And I heard, I asked them, I'm a Bruce Springsteen fan, and they played Thunder Road. And they're like, and we're all singing it. And I couldn't believe it. It was great. And then they said, what else? What do you want to hear? And I said, Born to Run. And I broke down and cried like a baby.
Good.
Because the first verse of Born to Run, oh, baby, this town rips the bones from your back. It's a death trap. It's a suicide rap. was my senior quote in high school. And everyone, I'm one of 5 children, everyone's senior quote was discussed around the family table, but mine. No one knew it. And I realized I had repressed so much darkness for so long. And I remember, 17 years old, my parents went through a horrible divorce, horrible. In the 70s, cost over $500,000 in legal fees. My father left my mother homeless on the streets of New York City to bring in and marry his secretary. And I lived in that house. That was home for me. And that was a very tough time. And it was a time where I learned about, I guess what I'd say is the benefits of repression. That obviously it's not healthy. But I found peace then in working at the hospital. It gave me great joy, and I learned I repressed a lot. And today in my practice, I'm an open book, and I know in this field that's not typical, but it seems to connect. If I talk to someone with a drinking problem, I realize there is nothing I can say to make them change their mind. I can tell them about the medical consequences of drinking, and they're going to say, it's not going to happen to me. And I tell them things happen fast and they happen slow. Both you ignore. Yeah. I remember one time my ex had called me and I was in a bar drinking. Outside, answered the phone and acted annoyed. What do you want? I'm at Target. And I heard an eerie silence. And the eerie silence was, I'm not going to worry about you killing yourself any longer. And she said, okay, all right, you're a Target. Goodbye. I hung up the phone and stood there for 5 seconds, realizing her screaming at me in silence. 30 seconds later, I was drinking my beer. And that was a tough moment, tough time. And again, as you know, as we're able to talk about, our issues, it is letting out the cancer, because we're all in it together, Pete. We're all there.
Interestingly, John, I came into this fully expecting that it was possible that we spoke about marriage and relationships.
Sure.
And I think it went a different direction that I'd really love to unpack and go into detail on, which is the repression of emotions that later manifest as physical ailments.
Well, I remember after I was diagnosed, and this was a life-changing moment. I called my dear friend Lynn, and she came over to my apartment. And I was crying like a baby. And she said to me, what's wrong? And I told her my whole life had been a lie. And I was just completely broken by it, because my whole life was a lie. And she said to me, John, why didn't you ever tell me? And I said, because I didn't want you to think less of me. And her response saved my life. Her response was, John, you idiot. Don't you get it? I think more of you for telling me the truth.
Interesting. That's a
And
lesson to be learned.
it was a great moment. It was,
Huh.
and at that time, I was like, yeah, I do have to tell my truth. And in
What
my
happens
practice,
when you tell your truth? How do
you're
you feel?
free. You're free.
So
You're
true
free.
freedom is simply telling your truth.
Yes, and
I love that.
I related to, and I can say personally, I ask, when I have couples, when one of them lies, I ask the other one, do you think, and let's just say the guy lies, do you think your wife loves you? And immediately he says, yes, of course she does. And my question next is, well, how do you know she doesn't love the lie? She may love the lie. And personally, in my case, through my own work and therapy, I can forgive myself for lying to my ex. I can do that. But I took away her choice. She wasn't married to me. She was married to the lie.
So you feel like it was a facade because you weren't free through telling her every truth.
Well, yeah, we got engaged, and she was 26 at the time, and said, I want to know where this is going. We had been dating 8 months. I had lost. Did you hear the word love in there, by the way? And I lost in my parents' divorce. I lost my family. That was it. And and I was like, well, okay, well, fine, we'll get married. And a lot of everything I did was, again, to, when we first met, in 5 minutes, we asked each other, tell me about your parents, tell me about yours. And she said, or she asked me about mine first. And I said, well, I just got divorced after 27 years. And she said, oh, really? Mine got divorced after 28. And my words were, good, we can beat them.
Within 5 minutes. Wow.
Yes. And it wasn't, and it was kind of an off the cuff comment, but as we dated, and I and also in looking back at that, I remember I was incredibly insecure and jealous. And one of the determinants was that made me choose her was the town stud, so to speak. He was friends with me, and I said to him, hey, did you ever go out with her? Did you ever, And he said, no, John, you're the man. She won't even talk to me. And so I realized, guess what? I didn't have to deal with my jealousy. I didn't have to deal with that insecurity. So that was a bonus. The only person I felt jealous about was she had a crush on John Travolta. And I thought, well, I think I'm safe here.
I don't know, man. I hate that guy. Such a great dancer, and he's so good looking still.
Yes, I know.
Head, he's good looking.
Well, but now, Pete, now I think I'm 28 now. You realize that, right? What's the youngest part of you? My youngest part is my liver. I stand by that age, not 59. So, but I didn't deal with that insecurity issue. And so, and loss of family, wanting to be better than my father. All of that. It
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 bubbled
led.
back up later, I'm guessing, huh?
I'm sorry.
I'm guessing it bubbled back up later on in life. And
Oh
you had to deal with
yeah,
it eventually.
yeah, and it was one of the behaviors that we learned in our family. My father was the culprit of this. Is if he was upset with someone, he'd just say, "I'm not talking to you anymore." And he did that with his children.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, again, I thought I'd never be like that. I do shut down. I work on that every day. But I remember my ex standing in our dining room, begging and pleading with me, no matter what, please promise me, no matter what happens to us, please promise me you'll never stop talking to the children. And to this day, I've kept that promise. I will never stop trying. Never. Ironically, I didn't realize until it was too late. She had that erased type of background from her history. Her boyfriend prior to me, I never knew his name or anything about him. We never discussed any of that. She just erased him, and I have been erased. And I don't think that's obviously in the best benefit of the children. But that's, and again, I will never give up hope on that.
Isn't it interesting how in our younger life we learn through observation, especially of, well-meaning, but sometimes very broken parents at that time before they've grown up as well and learned their lessons. And we implement their early broken practices into our own personal reality. And then what unfolds is, you're broken. Hey, I'm broken. Let's go be broken together.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Well, her father lived in New Hampshire. First time meeting her father, he came to the door and he was the drunkest I've ever seen anyone. And she was real embarrassed, and I was comforting. I was like, it's okay. It's okay. And, she did forgive her father, at one point. And unfortunately, I'm not forgiven.
Yet.
And exactly, yet. So I, there has been a lot of, repression and darkness. And in my practice, one thing I will say is to get that repression and darkness out. I don't believe with couples the 50-minute model works. Oh, Pete, really? You're saying something important? I need your credit card. Yeah. Come on, Pete, there's someone at my door. It's time to go. All right, we'll pick this up next week.
I've experienced that.
Yeah, the couple walks out and they hate each other, at that moment. And what I do is I charge per session, not per hour. I want it to end better than they walked in, and that's whatever that means. But I've been doing it long enough to kind of pick up on that moment. And when I see that moment, I end it fast. Yesterday, I had one session that went 4 hours, one that went 3.5. Through my own darkness, I've learned, yes, there's a clinical side of this, but this is their life. And, I can't say enough about that. I also allow open access between sessions.
What does that mean?
Well, let's say, and it already happened this morning. I met with the couple that I met with for 4 hours yesterday. the husband emailed me and said, "Hey, you got time to talk today?" Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. And if we talk for an hour, it's included. That's just part of it. And they come to clarity quicker that way.
Absolutely. And, and being able to know that ahead of time is useful, but to have an impactful 3 or 4 hour session like that, and then to step back and be able to sort of process through that in your own time for, say, a day or a week or a month, and then to be able to come back and say, okay, wait, now that we've unpackaged, say, however many years they've been together, however many years they've been with themselves, to unpack all of that and look at it all, really look at it, maybe for the first time ever. And then to need help, hey, how do we put this back in a way that's useful? And to be able to come to someone who truly understands how to do that, because your life experience shows that in my opinion is super valuable.
It was interesting yesterday. One of the couples talked about, and it took some time to get it out of him, but it talked about abandonment and absenteeism of his parents. And he was very good at talking about that. And it took me, like, any absenteeism and abandonment at home? And, one of the beauties of using this session model is the common words I hear is, I don't know. And in my model, that allows me to say, that's okay, I can wait. And you ever sit in 5 minutes of silence?
Yeah, it's uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah. It's a long time.
It affords them the moment to really process through it and come up with an answer.
Yeah, like the guy's saying, I would go up to bed and you would never come with me. You were like, I don't want, you go to bed earlier than I do, I stay here. It's like, but in my world, I was Gottman trained, this was a ritual of connection. And rituals of connection are so important. It's I don't know, this will make you laugh. My wife and I have yogurt time. And yogurt time every night, we share yogurt in bed and just talk for 10 or 15 minutes about anything, about our dreams, about anything, hopes, and to give you the importance of yogurt time. My wife's mother has pancreatic cancer, so she's doing really well. I'm so proud of her. She's had it for 2 years. The experience I had with my mother with lymphoma is I'd be on the phone and talk to her, but I didn't visit her enough. And I remember visiting her at a restaurant in New York City. And I walked in the restaurant, and first thing I thought to myself is, oh my God, she's dying. And seeing it was so upsetting. And then she was upset with me for being 10 minutes late. But that wasn't my mom. That was not like her. And we walked back to her apartment. And I remember that she couldn't hold her bladder and she ended up peeing on the streets of New York City. And she had such shame about it. And I remember comforting her as best as I could, but there was no way that there was enough comfort in that moment. And I learned my mother was incredible. She was, as I always say, if I ever say anything smart, it's coming from her, not me. And she was just an incredible woman. And one of the smartest things she did was a few months before she died. She had that experience with everyone where she was mean. She was mean, and even to her husband. And they had a boat, a Carver boat, that I call them the world's oldest teenagers. They were a fabulous couple. Well, and this Carver we loved. Well, Pete, guess what kind of boat I have today? I have a Carver. But as my mom became mean like that shortly before her death, I realized it was one of the kindest things she ever did.
How so?
She was saying, I don't want you to miss me. It's going to be okay. I don't want you to miss me. So we're going to say goodbye in this way now. And it was something where I really, I mean, my brothers and sisters, we haven't all gotten along. And the day of her death and her funeral, we were all together and loving each other. And that's all my mom wanted. The greatest gift we gave her was us loving each other. And that was a pleasing, that was a good way to deal with her passing. And I've learned to tell people from that, and I truly believe this. My mom just left here. She'll never leave me. She's always with me. And one of the greatest compliments, the Princeton graduate, the prodigal son, he met a couple I worked with, and we're talking after he meets the couple, and he said, John, I want you to know that if mom were alive today, she'd be prouder of you than any of us. And 3 of my family went to Princeton. I graduated from NYU, and to hear that was really nice. But a little bit of darkness regarding my mom's passing. I never cried. I never cried since she died. And I know why. Because that would be acknowledging. And I don't think I'd ever stop. That's why I came to believe that she just left here. She'll never leave me. We put her ashes in Central Park. We all sprinkled a bunch of ashes, and I had never been, through cremation or how that works. But only my mom would have ashes that sprinkled like white diamonds. It was incredible. It was such a great feeling. And I still know that park. And, I go to Central Park and I know where we laid the ashes. And it's a great moment. It's incredible. So, but, that was a hard time. Real hard time. That was in looking back, my drinking was not because of divorce. It was not because of that. It was because of, losing my friend and losing my mother. That's what, and the betrayal my father did. I would literally sit in the bar and think, I can't believe he's doing what he's doing. I just can't believe it. And the hiding of the behavior of the feelings. Mysteriously, Pete, I was the most popular guy in the bar. I was the happiest guy in the bar. And it was so terrible. We went to this restaurant bar last night. And when I see the bar in that world, I get disgusted, because they're all in that little world and they're in pain and they're hiding, and I know it. I saw this girl. She was sitting alone, and there were two chairs. And I knew, and it was 6 o'clock at night, and I knew by 10 or 11 o'clock, there were going to be two men, and she was going to go home with one of them. And then she was going to regret it in the morning, and then go back at night and do it again and again and again. And it becomes their world. It's
I understand that world.
Yeah, it's tough. I just
there are so many ways for us to deal with suffering and painful moments in life, and drinking, trying to sex it away, anything we can do to distract us from our truth.
Yes,
from
exactly.
Our freedom.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because after I got diagnosed, I had an appointment with a gastroenterologist. And this was after talking to my friend Lynn. And he said to me, "Okay, John, tell me about your drinking." And I thought, if I'm lying, I'm dying. And yeah.
Wow. Good t-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was again so incredibly releasing and freeing. And I told him everything about it. And he was another one that, and by the way, that was 15 years ago. I owe a visit to him to thank him, because he said words to me that also contributed to saving my life. He said, "Wow, John, hearing your story, it seems like you closed that chapter of your life." And those were the perfect words I needed to hear. And I went, "Yeah, I have. Yeah, that chapter is done. I won't do that anymore." I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with the transplant world, but how many people get accepted without even being evaluated for alcohol abuse? Not many. Not many. I didn't have to go to AA or anything. I just, now, in fairness, I'm sure I was tested 200 times before I got my appointment with Penn. And all of them came back negative. I was like, of course they did. It wasn't my world. It's just not part of me. But fire away, ask anything.
How do you go from being a self-proclaimed alcoholic to literally just stopping, closing that chapter and moving forward? And how easy or difficult was it to learn alternate practices to deal with the suffering and to fill the holes you felt in your soul without the drinking?
Here will be something controversial for you.
I love controversy.
I never considered myself an alcoholic. And the reason I didn't was because I was never in need of a drink. Ever in need of a drink. And the problem was, when we divorced, I was a role model in the community. I was on the board of the rec council. I was in touch, in communication with like over 1,000 families. And here's what was said. And I became friends with a lot of parents. And basically, here's what was said. Stay away from John. The wife said, stay away from John. He's single now. And the husband said, stay away from John. He's single now. Interesting. And I lost everyone. I never needed a drink. Literally every day when I would go to the bar, I would have my hand on the door. And the thought that ran through my mind was, I hope I meet her tonight. I didn't drink because I needed to drink. I went to the bar because there were people. It was the people I was addicted to, not the alcohol. I
Interesting.
I remember meeting someone and I kind of had a crush on her. And I was like a schoolboy, awkward, and I couldn't like talk to her and have an adult conversation. And I was just making the idiot of myself.
I think we've all done that, been there.
Yes, we have. And I remember her saying to me, John, you know, maybe if you just be yourself, I'd talk to you. And it hit me, and I thought, she's right. I've lost myself. And that was a pretty sad moment. I came to learn my need for human, you know, connection. This will sound almost psychotic. My apartment was a disaster area. I also had the televisions were on, 2 televisions were on 24 hours a day. Clothes all over the place. And every once in a while, I would clean it all up. It's the most empty feeling I had. Those clothes were friends. It's not that I spoke to them, but I knew I didn't feel lonely. And or empty is the better word. There was so much emptiness when I looked in my apartment, and there was nothing. There was nothing there. And I felt so incredibly empty. That's why I drank, to
the social aspect, the connection with other humans, the energy exchange.
Exactly. And
makes sense.
Because I never really, I didn't like, I remembered, and you know, the interesting question is, people, when I do some public speaking, they ask me, you know, how much did you drink? And they hate my answer because it's an elimination question. They want to know if they have to worry. And my answer is, however much I drank, my body said it was too much. And you never know where that line is. No one does. That's the mystery of it, is some people can drink, abuse alcohol all their lives, and they'll be okay. Some people, literally 6 months before I was diagnosed, I had some other pain, and they did blood work. And I thought, I'm busted. They're going to see my liver numbers are high. My liver numbers were fine. And then 6 months later, they tell me you're in trouble. So, but it was how much, but the, you know, the human contact and communication was incredible. And what I learned also from stopping drinking is they weren't friends. Every single one of them, except one, and she's passed away recently, didn't stay in contact with me. Only one did. And so when I went on this road, mysteriously, my initial friends were people in the waiting room, waiting for to get seen by the gastro doctor. And John Jones was the first one. He and I became close. And John, one day we're sitting there, and he said, John, you're not going to believe it. I'm up. I'm getting my transplant. I'm like, yeah, John, that's great. Yeah, that's great. You did it, man. You did it. And he said, all right, well, you know what? After I get it, you're going to be the first one I call. I'm like, all right, man. I'll be waiting for that call. It's a Friday night. I couldn't. And I just had to call. And I called him at 7:06 on a Saturday morning. His wife picked up the phone and said, John, he didn't make it. He just died.
You were feeling him.
Yeah. And John's a part of me today, as with 13 others. It just gave me more motivation. John's part of me. In terms of losing each other, that whole thing, we were so sick when we first met. We'd coach football against each other for 6 years, and we would shake hands and all that. And I'm like, you coach for who? He goes, you're the guy from where? I know you. And our bodies were just broken. And so it was that word alcoholic is, I do understand people that are alcoholics. I just I'd say I was a peopleholic.
I think that's your gift, though.
Yeah, it's
a gift to the world. That's why you're still around.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because one day I was in the transplant waiting room at Penn going to see Dr. Shaked one of the few times, and it was so enlightening. Was the transplant room only had 3 people waiting. The room across was the cancer room, and that was full. And Penn was adding a building to the hospital. And I was looking out the window, and this woman was next to me, and I said to her, you want to? She said, what? I said, by the time that building's up, we'll have our transplants. I was off by 5 years, but she strikes up a conversation, and she says to me, so what do you want to be remembered for? I was like, wow, whoa, what do you know that I don't know? Are you trying to tell me something here? And I said, no, I just want to know. And I said, I want to be remembered for loving and accepting everyone for exactly who they are, and maybe making them laugh a little bit. And I was in my head, I'm going, that'll impress her. That's a good answer. And then she floored me and said, are you living that way? I took a breath, and I was like, oh, wow. I don't know. I don't know if I am. And she said, well, why don't you try? And there again was a life-changing moment, because today I do live that way. I love and accept everyone for exactly who they are.
How do you do that?
They're doing the best they can. To understand, like, sometimes we meet people and we don't like them. Mm-hmm. And literally right before we met today, I was thinking about a guy. He's probably one of the meanest people I ever met. And I guess I didn't like him. And then I thought about, let me turn this because of the sun, but that might be worse.
Almost looked like a connective energy source between you and your mother. Right? Literally, it's kind of cool.
You tell me.
Perfect the way it is.
All right, good.
No changes necessary.
There I am in the light.
I like it.
So, I thought about this guy, and I was like, he's never had a partner, never had a girlfriend. In the 30 years I've known him, he's been alone. I've never seen the guy smile. And I felt really bad for him. And, I know, and I've seen him try to connect to people, and he's failed miserably. And, I have had some pleasant conversations with him. He has a lot of love in him for the Philadelphia Eagles and all Philly teams. And I admire his passion on that. He's just been hurt by the world. And again, I think he's doing the best he can. I learned that from Brene Brown. She had talked about, did some research on, do you think people are doing the best they can?
Her husband's answer to that question floored me.
Yes, exactly. So that hit me good. I'm glad you know that. That was such a great answer. Great interview, by the way.
What do you remember his answer as being?
I could almost remember it verbatim. I know when I do think they do the best they can, I feel better. Was basically the gist of it.
Yeah, that's about what I remember too. I really can't remember it word for word. I just remember the feeling of when he finally worded it the way he did 24 hours after the question. He had to go and think about it. So give me a little while.
Yeah, I loved it.
What a phenomenal answer, though. I don't know. I can't judge either way, but I know that I feel better when I believe that about others. That's
exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly. So, but fire away. This is good.
I know that you needed to press back an appointment or something. How much time do you have?
We're fine. We're fine.
Good. Okay.
We're good.
Great. I love what we've covered so far, and I really enjoy the connection that you obviously have had with your mother, the respect, the obvious inspiration that she's given you in your lifetime. I have a mother that does the same for me, and I'm very grateful for her.
Can I share an interesting story with you about my father?
Yeah, please do.
My father caused me a lot of pain, and so he was on his deathbed, and I took the 4-hour trip to go see him. And during those 4 hours, my last goodbyes, I wanted to blast him. I thought, yep, he obviously wasn't coherent, but you know what? I needed to do it. I needed to blast him. And about 10 minutes away, I thought, what are you doing, John? Why would you do that? Your father's dying. Why would you do that? Don't do that. Think of some pleasant times that you had, and talk to him about those. We used to go to Lake George as kids, and my father would drive the boat, and I'll never forget seeing him smile. And Lake George is like a piece of heaven to me. And he gave me that. And I told him about that. And I'll offend some people, but I'm a Yankee fan. And the reason why is my father always used to take me to Yankee games and Giant games in Yankee Stadium. And sharing that thermos of hot cocoa and getting our hot dog was just such a pleasant memory. And he would join us coming outside every once in a while to play basketball. And he was the only dad that did that. And I shared with him these moments. And the priest came in to give him last rites. Wife kicked me out, said it's time for you to leave now, while giving him his last rites. And out of respect for my father, I walked out. And his nurse followed me and said, John, I want you to know I was watching you and your father because I was holding his hand. And I saw your brothers and sisters come here. And I heard the 3 stories. And I saw your father squeeze your hand. And he did that with no one else but you. I'm proud of that. I was asked to give his eulogy, and his third wife, who I'm not a fan of, she manipulated his will while he had alcoholic dementia. But my children and my ex were at the funeral, and during his eulogy, I remember a defining moment in adolescence when I was deciding where to go to college. And I thought his answer to my question was, I was going to him as a kid to a father. What did I do? And his answer, I thought, was horrible. Just thought it was horrible. It was a 17-year-old kid. And he said, well, just do whatever makes you happy. He just kind of said, look, do whatever makes you happy. And I was like, Dad, in my head, repressed, not said, Dad, come on, man. Come on. You were so involved with, you went to Princeton, my brother and sister go, you were so involved in that. I'm asking you a question here. Answer it. And that's all he said. Do whatever makes you happy. It was the best advice I've ever had. When I got into the field I'm in now, this is what makes me happy. I work 7 days a week. No, I don't. I don't work. I haven't taken vacation. I don't work. I love what I do. This makes me happy. Yeah, you think hearing people's pain would be tough, but you know what? No, makes me happy because I know one day, and it happens every week, I get a call from someone yesterday was the anniversary of a couple that my wife and we were their witnesses in their marriage. So we wish them a happy anniversary, and to have that effect on people, and to have people, one of the things I do in my practice, I deal with a lot of infidelity. And the benefits of being a life coach is I don't have HIPAA in play. And what I can do is when I hear something in a session, I can text someone, Pete, I need you. Can you share your story with a couple? Mm-hmm. And literally 100% of the time, 2,000 couples. And if I text someone, hey, can you talk? If they are available 100% of the time, they say, yes, absolutely, John, I'd love to talk to them. And they don't know whether the person's in California, New York, they don't know anything about each other. They just know, hey, I've been there. This is what I did. And it's one thing hearing it from me. It's another thing hearing it from someone in their position.
So what you've done then with your practice is not only are you gifted at connecting, but at connection, bringing people together. Like say you haven't experienced something that they're going through. Well, I know hundreds of people who have, let me reach out and bam. But you can cross state lines through your coaching business, which you can't do as a licensed therapist. Is that correct?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Actually,
and awesome.
If you look on, maybe on the first, I don't know. I have a few therapists work for me, and I have them do life coach certification, so they can do that. They can cross that line. They don't have to diagnose or anything like that, which is nice. So they use their experience. I mean, I'd like to think the 9 years with Masterson, I learned something about psychiatric care. But it's,
and you use the Gottman Method, is that right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Where did you learn that? And what are the general practices of that so people are more aware of what that is if they want to dive deeper into that world?
Okay. I love it. It's science-based. I learned it at the Gottman Institutes in Seattle. They have several offerings of training. As a matter of fact, next week, I'm taking a training to give seminars to couples in terms of what makes the marriage work. They have something called the Sound Relationship House. I'll highlight some of the areas that make it work or break it. We'll go through the breakers first.
Sure.
There's Dr. Gottman has found there's 4 behaviors that predict divorce at a rate of 94%. And when you hear them, every couple I see has all 4. It's how we address them. They are criticism, defensiveness. If one of you is going to be critical, the other one's going to be defensive. They are eternal dance partners. The next one is contempt, which is a disrespect, superiority type of thing. And the last one is stonewalling, which 85% of men, it doesn't mean women, but 85% of men just shut down. We just stop. And we are there like, you know what? No matter what I say, it's not going to make a difference. She's just going to go on and on. And when we shut down, the woman escalates because she wants resolution. Now, what Dr. Gottman has found is this is actually physiological. Your heart rate goes above 100 beats a minute. Your oxygen level is affected. Blood is taken from the frontal cortex, and you basically you can't process. Now, what their Gottman research has said, this one, the condition is called flooded. When you are flooded, it takes 15 to 20 minutes. I don't care if the person takes a walk, listens to music, goes into a room, whatever they do, anything but think. Because if they think about the problem, they'll stay in that elevated state and they won't be able to. Research says 15 to 20 minutes. In my practice, when I ask, how long do you need? Overwhelmingly, the most common response I hear is, I need an hour. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So I can say to the man, good news, I bought you the hour. And here's what the woman says, literally 100%. John, if he needs an hour, that's fine. The problem is he doesn't come back and it just gets swept under the rug. But if he needs the hour, he can have it. And that is, we have to hold him accountable to that. So, you know,
come back emotionally or
come back and say, hey, all right, Pete, I mean, you know what? I'm flooded. Let's take a break, Pete. And come, you know what? I need some time. Let me just get it, you know, processed. And yeah.
Shake it off.
And yes. And come back. And I come to you and I say, all right, Pete, you know what? I'm okay now. Let's talk. Another thing I've learned from the Gottman Institute is everything said in the first 3 minutes of conflict are the important things. After that, it gets louder and uglier. So the antidote to that is to take a 5-10 minute break and go through and say, okay, this is what I heard you say. And repeat what you heard the person say. And then the other person says, this is what I heard you say. And most of the time, if you both demonstrate that you've heard each other, we're at a much better place. Because a lot of times people, I mean, one of the most common problems I have is people don't feel heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And the person listens to reply instead of listens to understand. And there's so much, if we'll have some fun and demonstrate that, I'll listen to reply, then listen to understand. So are you a sports fan at all?
No.
What's your hobby?
This.
This?
Talking, connected with people.
Oh God, you know what? All you do is talking to people all day. That just sucks. That's just no. That's no. That's just stupid.
I feel you have different interests for sure.
So I listen to reply. So what's your hobby? What's your hobby? Take two. What's your hobby?
Connecting with people.
Oh, yeah. Why do you like doing that?
I love to hear their stories and learn from them and experience life through their eyes and see if there's something I can pull out and extract from their experiences that may help me be a better man.
Oh,
husband.
wow. How long have you been doing this? How long have you been fascinated with this?
Oh, about 6-7 years now.
Wow. Wow. That's interesting. So now, just in 2 questions, I have a much better understanding of why you do your hobby versus just telling you, I don't like your hobby.
Where I felt almost the need to get all defensive, like, whoa, I better back off and build a wall here to protect my emotions and myself. Yeah, interesting.
Exactly.
I like that.
So the other big determinant in terms of what makes it work is we make what's called bids for connection, and we make them every day. And they're subtle and they're blatant.
Bids, huh?
Yes, bids for connection. I'll give you the textbook example, then I'll give you an example from my marriage. And I promise you'll call me an idiot, and then I'll tell you what the research says. So there's 3 things that can happen when you make a bid. You can turn toward a bid, turn away from a bid, or turn against a bid. So we live on the water, and there's windows out looking at the water, and my wife sees a nice boat going by. She says, wow, nice boat. She's not saying that to hear herself speak. She's saying that because she wants me to look at the boat. So to turn toward the bid, all I have to do is say, yeah, I see it. Yeah. I don't even have to agree that it's nice. I just have to respond to it. That's it. Look at that boat out there. That's a nice boat. I'm looking at Facebook. I could care less. Turning away. Or look at that boat out there. And I get angry with her because I'm trying to read a work email here, and I don't need to look at that stupid boat. Turning against. And here we go, the live example. My wife says to me one day, ever since I was a little girl, I always wanted to go to Niagara Falls. All her life, she wants to go to Niagara Falls. Say this to the ultimate bid for connection. My answer, went there as a kid, nothing special, and walked away from her, walked up the stairs. I passed her and saw her shoulders shrug as I was going upstairs. I got to the top of the stairs and I called myself an idiot and came down and said, of course we'll go. So, and apologized, obviously. So here's what the research says. Couples who turn toward each other's bids 86% of the time, and no one has a calculator. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's scientific, but it's it if it's happening most of the time. Internally,
They're keeping track. We all are.
Yes, exactly. Those couples are very happy, except for me. My wife turns towards like 95% of the time, at least. And that number's low. And I remember one time I wanted to go on a sunset boat ride. She's like, I can't, I'm really busy. And I was like, you turned away? Then I had to put myself in check, like, come on, John.
Yeah, I'm blessed with a wife who's similar as well. Yeah, very present, very giving.
But couples who turn toward bids only 33% of the time, those couples end up divorcing or breaking up. Then they do is because their emotional bank account is empty. And if you envision $100 in the world currency of the marriage, and you have all $100 and your wife says, let's go to Mars, you're going to go because you're going to put money in her account. You're definitely going to go. You're going to want to. You're going to want to turn toward that bid. However, if your emotional bank account is empty and she says, oh, there's a good movie on TV tonight, watch it yourself. I'm not watching that. I want to do my own thing because you have no money to put in her account. There's no emotional asset there.
That's a good point. What are some great ways that we can sort of fill up our own emotional bank account so that we can constantly and consistently provide an overflow for those around us?
Well, since I've never been asked that, that's how we fill up our own account. It gets to be a little dangerous, I think, because why do I need you if I'm connecting with myself? Why do I mean in the relationship itself, in the marriage itself, as long as that money is going back and forth, I'll give you a great of it. In my previous marriage, my bids were for intimacy. Her bids were for me to do housework. And this sentence was said, no matter what I do, it's not going to be enough. Who do you think said that, me or her?
That's a good question. I'm guessing you.
Both of us.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. But yeah, I'm like, yeah, that could go either way, really.
Yes, exactly.
And it would be true, really,
Yeah, exactly. So I was saying bluntly, I'm not vacuuming the living room. I'm not getting any. And she was saying, you're damn right you're not getting any because you're not vacuuming the living room. And that was, in a very simple context, that was the heart of it. We weren't turning toward each other's bids, and we actually stopped making them because we had no.
That's dangerous.
Yes, exactly. We had no emotional assets, and what we would do, lo and behold, if I wanted to go play golf, I'd have that connection with someone else. A friend of mine, yeah, let's play golf. He turn toward the bid. Let's do that, and she would do her thing. She started this business with a friend, turning toward. So we weren't turning towards each other's. We were turning this way.
Yeah.
So
yogurt time.
Yogurt time, ritual of connection is
a daily ritual of some kind is so important.
Johnny Cash was once asked to define paradise, and he said, "This morning, having a cup of coffee with my wife." Incredible answer. And I'll tell you, the interesting thing about yogurt time is my wife, I want her to go down to see her mother every month. She lives in North Carolina. So she goes for a couple days. So last week she went on Thursday. So no yogurt time. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday she got back. No yogurt time because we're doing our own thing. I'm doing my own thing. I'm used to being alone. I could almost schedule a fight on Monday or Tuesday because we don't have that connection. It's interesting how I remember one time saying to her, it was like 2 nights. And I was like, I'm not feeling it. We need yogurt time. And she's like, yeah, I know. It's so important, Pete. It's so important to have that little, the average couple spends 35 minutes a week talking about their relationship. 5 minutes a day. Do yogurt time. Create your yogurt time.
This is interesting timing. I could go on for days, maybe months, discussing so many things with you. And our yogurt time is done weekly on Sunday mornings. And I hate to cut it what could seem as short. However, I do have a commitment to my yogurt time with my wife. And
Sure.
I don't want to miss that.
That's great. That's great.
We do it weekly. We listen to content together. We discuss, how the week went, what we can work on maybe, and we go over the bills briefly, and then on with the day. But I just want to recognize you as a huge benefit, a source of inspiration and wisdom for anyone who chooses to seek you out, follow you on social media, connect with you in person through Zoom, a video call, as a coach, as a therapist, as a friend. I see what you've created. I see that you have a true gift with people. And I just want to recognize you as a source of enlightenment, unconditional love and kindness, and some good laughs. And I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Pete. It's been a pleasure. I just you've accomplished the impossible. I'm speechless. I like to connect with people, and I have those moments with couples I work with where I tell them before we start this process, there's going to be a time where we're taking a boat ride after you've connected with your spouse, and I'm going to turn around while I'm driving and give you a high five, and it's going to be, we did it. We did it. And that is a great moment. And I love when you see, it's interesting as couples come in here, they're sitting on opposite, or Zoom, that they're sitting on opposite sides of the couch. Realize it as sessions are happening, they're getting closer and closer. And it's just a great thing. And my medical history and darkness, as I said, I see it as a gift. It's one of the best things that ever happened to me. And so, and I welcome anyone to call anytime.
What are the best ways for people to reach out to you and connect with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Life Bridge Coaching, and on Instagram, life_bridge_coaching_. LinkedIn, John Weiman, phone number 410-419-8149. Feel free to call or text. Just say how you heard from me, and we'll connect. I welcome any call. Again, this is my dream. It's my job, but it's my dream. So I look forward to that. Awesome. I really do. So
to anyone out there who is suffering or who is in pain and desires to connect better with self and especially with their loved ones and others, I urge you and hope that you really take seriously how important connection is, and use John and some of the tools that he's learned throughout his life experiences. And you really are a brilliant person. You were shining throughout the entire interview, and and I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, John.
All right, Pete. Good talking to you. We'll talk again. All right.
Good. If
have
I could get you to
time.
hold on, have yogurt time. If I get you to hold on for just one moment.
Sure.